Hi, I'm M.
And my name is Bea.
And this is
Fangirls Anonymous. A quick warning, this podcast is not for kids.
We get into some pretty explicit stuff.
But if you're still with us and into that, welcome. Hi, Em.
Hi! Oh my god! It has been so long. It has been 84 years since we have done this. Yes. What? I mean, have you seen the movie Titanic?
No.
Have you? Oh my god.
I've seen parts of it. I would recognize it if you put it on the screen in front of me.
Of anybody I know, you would be the person who hasn't seen that movie.
Yes, I, despite appearances, do not consume media anymore.
Anyway, hello. It's M and Bea again. We are back for season 3. Welcome to 2023. Hilariously, our first season came out in 2021, second season came out in 2022, and third season came out in 2023! Amazing.
And it wasn't even on purpose.
It wasn't even on purpose, but it ended up being that way. Okay, so, exciting times. A lot of things have happened to me specifically. I needed to take the time. I really, really appreciate it. Yeah, we are thinking of doing a little bit more of a relaxed schedule, just so that we can keep up. But yeah, it's going to be great either way. We are going to be talking about 5+1s today.
We're going to kick it off with something, I think, familiar to most people who've been in fandom for longer than just a very short time.
If you listened to our little announcement about the extension, we did talk about how we're going to do 5+1s for the first fic club this year. And we will get into those more later on. But we really wanted to talk about, in our first episode of the season, about the trope that the fic club is going to be centered around, so that everybody really knows what it is. Not that I'm expecting people to not know what 5+1s are if you're in season 3 of this show. But it's just fun to talk about, too, because the history is kind of startlingly hilarious with the Smallville fandom. But it is a really, really, really cute trope. I haven't really read a whole lot of them, though.
Yeah, we were talking about it earlier, and we've decided that the really curious thing about 5+1 is pretty much everybody knows what they are. I mean, they're self-explanatory to a certain extent, but you encounter them not infrequently in a lot of fandoms. Small fandoms, big fandoms, everywhere. But you don't go looking for them usually. There are some types of fics that you're like, I'm in the mood for, a fluffy fic, or a kid fic, or a dark fic. But you don't really go, I'm in the mood for a whole bunch of 5+1. Or at least we aren't. Maybe someone is. We want to talk to you. What is it about 5+1 that makes you want to search them out?
Yeah, I was about to say, I don't think a whole lot of people's favorite trope is 5+1, but if you are out there, please send us an email at mandbepresents@gmail.com, because we would love to know how your brain works. But it is a really fun trope, and that's why we're talking about it, and that's why our first fic club is centered around the trope, because it's accessible, and usually very adorable, unless it's like a really sad 5+1.
Yeah, they don't tend to be epics, which is sometimes really nice, especially when you're just dipping a toe in, trying to figure out what you like about it. Having a whole bunch of shorter works is nice.
Yes, if you love, or if you're starting to fall in love with a ship, then it's a really nice way to be like, I need to know more about what the fandom thinks about this ship, right? Because 5+1s tend to give you a lot of information about the ship itself. It's so sweet. It's so cute. Okay, so before that, though, we do have some podcast homework. As I said, we are doing the fic club, so please go and read the fics that we're about to talk about. The links will be in the show notes. We also have reviews that you can write if you want to for Apple, just to be like, hey, this is a really good podcast. That would be really nice. We always really love it when somebody writes a review for us. And then we also have a Patreon. If you want to support us, you can. It's out there. You don't have to, but it's out there. Okay, podcast homework done. Okay, so 5+1 is 5, like, the number can be different, but 5 ideas, concepts, things that are written about, usually in short form. Sometimes they can be longer, but usually short little snippets of an idea, 5 in a row, and then the +1 usually, like, breaks up the pattern of the 5 before, or stops the pattern, or it's just different.
Often it's the opposite of, so if it's 5 things that did happen, 1 thing that didn't, or vice versa.
Yeah. It's fun.
And
it's really fun to read, and usually it's quite fluffy. It tends to be.
I've seen them be sad, or at least angsty to start with, and then you have the end where it's different.
I've also seen a lot of hurt comfort, like 5 times somebody got punched in the face, and then 1 time they didn't. You know, like, actually, that's a little bit on the nose, but something like that. Yeah.
And they tend to be sort of bite-sized. I think the longest 5+ ones I've ever read were where each thing was about a chapter in length, which even then isn't a very long fic.
Yes, one of the fics that we are having you read for Fic Club is like 21K. So, and that's the longest I think I've read. I could have read something that's 30K in the Avengers fandom, but I can't exactly remember what it's called, so I couldn't find it. But it's not usually a 100K epic, which, you know, that's all right.
It's just as well.
Yeah, it's just as well. There are things for everybody out there. But, so, do you want to get a little bit into the history of it? Because I found a post on Tumblr, and I was like, what? Oh, man. Smallville. It always goes back to Smallville, doesn't it?
If it doesn't go back to X-Files, it goes back to Smallville.
It really does. What was up with those 2 shows? And they couldn't be any more different from each other.
In this case, though, we can lay blame squarely on Smallville's shoulders.
Yep.
It all started, and can be traced back, as far as we can tell, to a fic in the Smallville fandom called 5 Things That Aren't True by Basingstoke.
We really need to find out if we can talk to Basingstoke. I say Basingstoke in my head. Because they were prolific. If you have listened to any of our other episodes, we talk about Basingstoke and other stuff, and usually they're around at the beginning of an amazing fandom. Which is just, like, crazy. I really want to be able to find them and talk to them about this.
Yeah, and just to clarify, this is, I believe, something that was written and posted on LiveJournal, so this is, like, pre-AO3 even.
Yeah.
And you'll have noticed that the title is 5 Things That Aren't True. There's no +1 here. No. At least initially, it was just a list of things, which we'll talk about that idea a little bit more, because for all that it's very much a fandom thing, it didn't spring forth just fully formed as an idea. So this fic was fairly popular. Popular enough, actually, that it sort of crossed fandom community lines. Yep. And it entered into the Buffy fandom, who is also responsible for many things. And Kita issued kind of a challenge where they wanted to see more of this sort of 5+1, but they wanted it related to the character Spike. And it sort of took off from there, because of course community challenges are where a whole bunch of people come and try a thing. And apparently authors looked at this and went, wow, that's really fun. But somewhere in there, people went, okay, so a list of a certain number of things is all fine and good, but it's only fun if you get to change it up at the last part. That's actually a piece of writing advice. At one point that I got was, if you're going to do 3 things, change the last thing, because that's sort of a pattern. People like that, where it makes it interesting. So after it sort of started to spread, you ended up with the +1 at the end. But, and 5 things somehow ended up as the way to go. I don't know, 5 is a nice number, maybe?
I guess.
It seems kind of weird to me that it's not 3+1.
So agree with you. I when I was first reading 5+1s, I was like, there must be a reason why it's 5. Like it was, I don't know, like, 5 is just a number that is really important in fandom or something, right? like I really thought that when I was 15. But as I've read along and we have learned more for this episode, it doesn't feel like it was ever, like, it was literally just because Basingstoke said 5 things that aren't true. Like, like, it was just that precedent was set, and then everybody, I mean, sometimes the numbers do change, but it's called 5+1 trope. So, I don't know. I don't know why it is 5+1. 3 is normally what the number is for things in a group in fiction.
3 is a magic number.
Yeah.
Not 5. Almost never 5. After 3 you get 7 things, which this is also not 7, even if you count the +1.
It's 6 things!
Which
it's
is
so weird.
very odd.
It's so weird.
Now, well, the actual, like, explosion of 5+1 can be traced kind of back to these 2 events, this one fic by Basingstoke and this community challenge by Kita. There were other fics that existed before those 2 that apparently did not quite have the same spark in terms of the community. Pretty notably, there's 4 preludes and 1 short epilogue on Han Solo or After the Empire Strikes Back by Marcia Bryn.
No. It's After the Empire Struck Back.
Sorry.
Which is so funny to me.
This fic was written in 1981, so I don't actually think it's digitized anywhere. But so if you can find it and or have read it, we'd love to hear about that.
I would love to read it. I would love to read that fic.
The other one is 5 Easy Pieces and a More Difficult One by Nova, which is a Blake 7 fic from 1999. And I'm also not 100% sure if that one's digitized or not. I couldn't find it either way. So, you can see pretty clearly that, the format was there, the thought process was already there in fandom, and it just sort of needed to be, I guess, embraced by the larger community, which leads me on a whole rabbit trail of how many wonderful tropes that people love are just waiting to be discovered in fandom. But that's just a whole other episode right there.
Oh, man. Like, the concept that we haven't found in, like, there are more tropes that the entire fandom kingdom would love. Oh. Oh, that's nice. That's
kinda
nice
wild
to think. Like, you know how there are tropes that are new, and people like them, like, oh golly, the throwing up of the flowers. Hanahaki. Thank you. Hanahaki. That's a new one. Kind of.
Ish.
It's new to me.
It's definitely newer than this trope.
It's definitely newer than this trope. But, the whole, like, number of things plus 1 in literature. I can't think of anything that is in literature that, like, it's such a fandom thing.
So, it's interesting that you bring that up, because I feel like we don't have it codified in broader literature in the same way at all.
No.
But the actual idea of it, like I said, I've had just general writing advice that has sort of that idea embedded in it, that it's a pattern and then a deviation.
Yes. I was an editor at one of the editors at my newspaper in high school, and they always were like, 3. You always need 3.
Yeah, it's the magic 3, and it's usually actually 2 in 1.
Yeah.
Like, here are your 2 selfish wishes and your 1 unselfish wish, which is kind of what happens in Aladdin.
Yes.
Or look at Cinderella. You've got the 2 wicked stepsisters and Cinderella. She's different than the other ones. The idea of a repeated motif over and over is actually fairly common in wider
everywhere.
Literature.
It's in music. It's in literature. It's in physical art. It's everywhere. It's in clothing.
Yeah. The thing that actually springs to my mind immediately is a fairly famous poem called 13 Ways to Look at a Blackbird, I believe. Huh. Please tell me if I am wrong about that title exactly. It's a very famous poem. It's easy to look up. I cannot remember the author for the life of me. But it's literally just 13 little very short poems about a blackbird. That's it. That's the whole poem. And it feels sort of like 5+1, where it's, in a lot of ways, there are a lot of 5+1 that have a plot of some flavor, that things move along. But there's a lot of it that's also just scenes, sort of in isolation almost. And sometimes you can get the feeling they're linear, sometimes they're not. But it's a repeated look at a ship often, where you're just kind of viewing it from different ways.
Yes. The relationship itself, or like one of the characters in the view of another character, or the characters in the view of a different character entirely outside of the ship. Like, it's just very... It's an introspective... It's like segmented writing with an introspective on a ship. Or, I've never actually seen Gen 5+1.
I don't know if I have either. I feel like I have, but I couldn't name you one.
Yeah. I cannot remember reading any Gen.
I've definitely done pre-relationship ones.
Oh, I've read like father-daughter 5+1s, where it's like growing up. Like, it's like little segmented like memories of the daughter growing up, or the son growing up. Those are pretty sweet. That's Jen.
Yeah, it is. I actually think that's one of the greatest strengths of a 5+1, though, is because the structure is so important to the trope, it sort of precludes having an equally strong plot sometimes. It's really hard to be like, and my plot is going to be 5 distinct scenes and 1 extra scene. Like, it's really hard to plot like that, but it's really easy to write scenes. So, for Force, in order to make a really good one, it has to be about the characters, not a plot.
What's also great is that you do not have to worry about transitions at all.
Nope, you just put some kind of a line break.
Yep.
Right along.
Which is one of the reasons why I absolutely adored segmented writing in college. If I could write it, I got an English degree, so if I could segment the hell out of an essay, I would segment the hell out of that essay. Oh man, I hated transitions. I still hate transitions in life. Anyway, yeah, no, 5+1 is, it's accessible and easy to read because it's transitionless. Like, there's no... You're just kind of... You're able to flow through the 5 really easily, and then you're able to enjoy the difference in the 1.
Yeah, it's also because most of the time... It's not all of the fic, but a lot of it makes a point of having a 5+1 title. Something... And this might be a real fic out there, but something like 5 times Steve almost kissed Bucky and 1 time he did. It's pretty clear that this is a 5+1.
And you know what's going to happen in the 1. You would think that would not be fun to read, right? Because, like, in fic...
There's no mystery to it.
Yes, exactly, there's no mystery. It reminds me of that book about that man who ended up dying in the wilderness. He decided to go out to be like a wilderness guy, but then he ended up dying because he ate some wrong plants or something. And on the back of that book it says, this guy went out and then 6 weeks later he died. But people still read the book. You know? Like, even though the mystery is gone, people still read it and enjoy it. Even though that is so the opposite of what a lot of people say that you should do when you're writing.
It's also worth... That might be part of the reason why it's a really... strong piece of fandom, because a lot of the time when you go into a fic, you sort of know what you already want out of it, because you can look at it and see what the ship is from the get-go. And you can see any major tags, and often there are warnings in the beginning of chapters or stories. So you know going in, but you're here for the journey, not the end point. So 5+1 is great about the journey and not the end point, because you know how the journey is going to go. You know what's in it most of the time. It's tagged. It's in the title. You could hand this to somebody who's never, been in the fandom at all, and they could just read the title and you got it. Like, I didn't even have to tell you for one of my examples that it was in Star Wars. You knew based on the title it was in Star Wars fandom.
It's funny how you would know... Okay, people who are in fandom would think, if they had any amount of information about the 5+1 trope, right, they would think that the 1 is the most important aspect of it. But the 5, I think, is more important than the 1. Because a lot of the times, the title is, like we said, 5 times Steve almost kissed Bucky, and the 1 time that he did. And that's a 5+1, you know? So, I would say, yeah, we like the journey more than we like the 1. And I think that's also just, like, fanfiction people in general, because we know what's going to happen at the end. We know from the tags and from what it was written in the summary that the people are going to get together at the end. And we're always pleasantly happy and surprised when it happens. Even though we know what's going to happen, we just reread it over and over and over and over and over again because we love these characters. Mm-hmm. So, and 5+1 is just a synthesized version of that for us.
There's also, as from a writer's perspective, there's something really nice about having a super set structure. Like, yes. You need to write X number of things and one conclusion. Go.
If you can think of 5 things and one thing that is kind of different from those 5 things, you've written a 5+1.
Pretty much. But on the other hand, it's a challenge partly because 5 is a lot of things. Yeah, like we said, 3 is the magic number. Most people think in 3s. They're like, I can come up with 3 easy. But 5? That's a lot.
Yeah.
And it's also a challenge because, like we said, it's character-driven, and it's about the journey, which means the tensioning, if you got it, has got to be on point.
It's so true.
You have to know how to tension your story well, in order to get people past 1 and 2, through 3 and 4, to 5, and then your conclusion. Because it would be really easy for 3 and 4 to be boring or skippable.
Yes.
But if you're doing it right, then it's not.
You have to save certain punches, like certain hard knocks, for certain numbers of the 5, and then the rest of them have to be a little bit softer. It can't just be like punch after punch after punch after punch after punch. It has to be... The tension has to...
Or if you're doing that, you have to pay off so much.
Oh my god, the 1 has to be the best written thing in the entire universe.
Or it has to, like, tie up all your emotional loose ends. If your 5 things are 5 times they were tortured and 1 time they were saved, you have to make that emotional impact of them being rescued so good.
I don't know if I would want to.
Because if somebody just shows up and drags them out, then they're like, oh wow, that was not a +1.
That wasn't a +1 at all. That was 6 times I got hurt from this author. Oh boy. Yeah, I mean, the +1 is an important aspect of 5+1, obviously. It's part of it. And the +1 has to be good. If the +1 isn't good, then it almost kind of invalidates the rest of it. But the 5, in order to get to the +1, the 5 has to be good too. The whole thing has to be good. You can't mess up a single part of the 5+1 formula. But,
again, easy but hard. You've got a very clear path.
Yes. Yeah.
But you have to be very good at walking it.
You have to be a good hiker to do it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. There are other types, though, of 5+1s that, like, variants, though. Like 5 things. There's also 4+1. I don't know. I think I've read 4+1s before. Mm-hmm. But, like,
I've read
much rarer.
4+1s. I've read 4+1s, 6+1s, and 5+2s, which are really weird.
I don't like 5+2s. It gives me a stomachache.
It's like you hit your conclusion, and then they're like, oh no, I need an epilogue, which isn't bad. It's nice to have an epilogue. It's just...
Don't call it a 2.
Weird.
Just call it a 5+1 and an epilogue. Oy. And then there are just, like, more specific 5+1 variations, like we were talking about with the title. A lot of 5+1s, the title is, like, 5 things that happened and then 1 time it didn't. Or 5 times it didn't happen and 1 time it did. That's usually what the 5+1 is. But then there are weird other variations that I can't think of any right now, but there are.
There are some that are almost fandom specific, like a whole bunch of people are kind of on a thought idea. They're all on the same thought train together.
Yeah.
And so you get a whole bunch of things that are sort of the similar or the same. And that's not a bad thing, because, again, they're sort of like candy. You eat them pretty quick, and they're very nice.
Oh my gosh, I just read what you wrote here. It is like a montage. It's like like implying time is passing.
Yeah, that's one of the curious things I find about the 5.
Yeah, it's fun.
Is, again, I've seen it done really well where there is a cohesive plot connecting the 5 to the 1, and I've seen it where it's all strictly linear, and I've also seen it where it's extremely non-linear, or like each scene almost feels like a separate little story by itself.
Yes.
Sort of, I don't want to say one-shots because that's wrong. Vignettes.
Vignettes.
I've seen them as vignettes.
I mean, segments,
but,
too. It's very segmented.
In all of those cases, because you've got these 5 things connected by a motif, it implies motion, and depending on how you put it together, it implies sort of a story, even if it's non-linear.
Yes.
A lot of times, the non-linear ones are very emotionally driven stories. 5 times that somebody lied to you. Even if you don't say them in order, you do know that these things happened, and it sort of builds upon itself. So if you pick, perhaps not chronologically, but emotionally the most hard-hitting to be the 5th one, and then you get your truth, there's still a story there.
You know, it is weird, though, that it is a shorter format. That something like this would, like, just almost invariably be shorter. I've seen such short ones. I've seen, like, 2,000-word 5+1s, and they're great! Mm-hmm. They're really well written! It's so weird to me that it's shorter, because it's 6 things. Mm-hmm. There have to be 6 things.
Depending on the variant you're doing, yeah. It's wild that they're like, we're gonna fit 6 little tiny scenes in, like, 200-word bursts, and you're going, whoa. And they're all connected, and they have a firm conclusion.
Yeah.
That's some really interesting flash writing.
That means you have to be organized.
You have to be punchy. Like, your writing has to be so punchy.
So punchy. We've used the word punch so often in this episode. I don't know why. It just happened. Okay, so you have a podfic to recommend, but it's also just a regular fic, right?
Yes.
Yeah. That usually...
So, this one is not a 5+1, but it functions a lot like one. I would say this one is a little bit more steady in that it's a fairly plot-heavy, like, the emotional through line is what you care about, but there is plot to keep it together, as opposed to this particular trope. It's called Weddings, Plural, and a Yak by Speranza. And the podfic is read by Raina Jenkins, who is fantastic, and you should listen to everything that they do. But it's a Stargate Atlantis fic, and the ship is Rodney McKay and John Shepard. I was about to reach for the wrong J name. And it is basically what it says on the tin, which is, if you know anything about Stargate Atlantis, it's pretty classic adventure sci-fi. They're off exploring new lands, and in the course of doing so, occasionally they have to have people get married. And It is invariably, time after time, John Shepard and Rodney McKay who get married. And it's sort of a running gag until it isn't. I'm not going to tell you much more because you should read it. It's really sweet. You don't have to know a ton about Stargate Atlantis in order to read it or listen to it. It's mostly just space adventures, kind of disconnected from the larger plot. I would say it's a good example of what makes a 5+1 work without actually being a 5+1.
Fun. I think it's a good idea to have an example of a 5+1 that isn't actually a 5+1. But we do have 3 5+1s that you should be reading for Fic Club that's going to be coming up soon, which is very exciting. We're thinking about just getting into it a little bit, because obviously we're going to get into in-depth with all 3 in an episode coming up for Fic Club, which please go ahead and read the fics and then send us any comments, jokes, analysis, ideas, anything really, to mmpresents@gmail.com. It's out there for you to send emails to. But these 3, I think we're going to just talk about a little bit, in the fact that they are 5+1s, and it's just a little bit of a kickstart to the Fic Club. So the one that I have found for Fic Club is Something Smart to Do by Kianspo. Bea stole my thunder a little bit with Weddings, Plural, and a Yak, because this is essentially that as well. So it's a spurk fic where Spock and Kirk end up getting accidentally married 5 times, and then the one time they actually get married. Like, that's what the whole fic is about. But it is specifically 5+1, and the author does a really good job. What's great about Spurk is that they get into so many hijinks because of their professions that it's easy to just write something and it to be realistic, that they would accidentally end up being married 5 times, essentially. Especially when you consider all of the different cultures that they experience in space. So it's really, really, really fun. And a friend of mine considers it to be the best fic of all time. And I have to somewhat agree with her, because it's so fic, and it's so well written, and I would actually say it is the best, oh god, I don't know. It's the best short form. Yeah, but it's the best short form spurk fic that you can find on AO3, I think. I would say that. It's very, 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 very good, and I can't wait for everybody to read it and enjoy it and then send in their comments, because it's so sweet. I love the Hurt Comfort too, man. I'm a whore for Hurt Comfort. First whore for Hurt Comfort comment, season 3! Woo!
It only took us slightly over half an hour to get there.
Oh, boy.
For those of you who are drinking along, take a drink.
No! Oh boy. Yeah, don't take shots, because we say things over and over and over again. Anyway, what's the next one for you, Bea?
So to continue the tenderness train, because I cannot tell you how much 5+1 marries well with wanting to be nice to characters. It just works.
It does. It really does. Not a whole lot of angst, but some.
So, the fic is called My Love Will Forever Be Stronger Than Stone, Don't Be Afraid You Are Never Alone by Resicon 1990. And it is a Witcher fic, and it's basically 5 times that Yeskier was giving Geralt a hug, and 1 time he got one back. It's really cute. It's not very long, and I don't know, it makes me smile a lot, so I hope it makes you smile a lot. There's no plot, y'all. It's just being nice to Witchers. I don't have anything else to say on that. Read it.
but we're gonna have a lot more to say in our episode for
later.
Yeah, the fic.
Once you've read it, we can discuss it.
Yeah.
So the second one is just, again, we've established a pattern of 4 things now. I'm going to change it. This is the +1. This one is more hurt than comfort, though it is hurt comfort. It's called Someone That Hates to See Me Go by Autumnhobbit. This one is a Batman fic. It is about Jason Todd getting into lots of situations where he saves his siblings, and then one time when he is saved by his siblings. It's mostly him getting beat up or beating people up for his siblings, and one time he really lands himself in the fire and gets rescued. I don't think it's explicitly 5+1, but it's definitely that kind of a format. So,
great.
We're gonna say it's mostly 5+1.
Well, we have to have 2 specific 5+1s and then another third one that's kind of unspecifically 5+1, because that's just who we are as people right now. Okay, so we have said the words 5+1 like so often. Oh my god.
They have lost all meaning now.
They really have. But please go ahead and read those. They're all really good. We wouldn't wreck a really bad fic.
Unless that was what the episode was about.
Yeah, that's true. We did a bad fic episode, right? Or was it? No.
We did My Immortal, but I don't know that we ever did bad fic.
Oh, that was some shade. But it's true.
We did Crack, which is a cousin.
It's a cousin. Sometimes it's not bad. We talked about that. Anyway, please go ahead and read it. All 3 of those for the next fic club that's coming up. Yeah, this was so fun. I'm so excited for season 3. It's going to be a little bit looser, a little bit more relaxed. And that's cool. We have some really fun guests coming up. We have some really fun ideas for a lot of different episodes. Yeah, I think this is gonna be a great season 3, and we're so excited that you're here listening with us, and listening to us. You're not here right now, but listening to us. It's very exciting. Yep. All right, so I think that we are done.
Yeah, so I guess we'll see y'all next time on
Fangirls Anonymous. Bye!